Hey everyone, Rob from Southgate Media Group here. Before we get started with this podcast, we have a quick message. If this is your first time checking out the show, we love that you found us and we really hope you enjoy it. What we have to say is for the subscribers. If you enjoy our shows, would you please donate to help keep these going? We don't want to have to put traditional ads on these shows, but this does cost money. So we really do rely heavily on donations. To make a donation to the show, please go to our website, www.southgatemediagroup.com. Go to the page for the show, and in the upper right-hand corner is a donate button. It takes you right to PayPal, and you can donate whatever amount you want. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. And now on with the show. Welcome to the Nuff Said podcast, the long, elusive roundtable episode with all of us from the Nuff Said universe. And in May, I think the Nuff Said universe is going to dissolve. It's all over, and then we will be reborn after Battle World.
Wait, what was that? Wait, what?
So I am razzing Rob Southgate. With me is
the chintzy Charlie Esser,
the jesting Jonathan.
Fighting Phil Parrish.
Oh, now when you did fighting, you did PH for fighting, right? What, did I kill the room with a bad joke?
I think it's PF. It's
oh, that type
like
of
Price Fister. It's
so Phil is PFIL, right? Yeah, I heard the crickets. Yeah. You know what? It's better than the booze I usually get, so I'll take it. So, all right. There's so many things to talk about with this. And later on tonight, as we go on, and I think what we're going to end up doing is splitting this into two parts. I'm not sure. So listeners, if it cuts off and you're like, wait, I didn't hear a Lil or Jack, it's because we put it in two parts, or it'll be one big, chunky, full episode. I'm Chunky Charlie, and with me, okay.
I'm relatively chunky. So that
would be me. I'm relatively chunky, Rob Southgate. Okay. Or if we're a comedy team, relatively and chunky.
There you go.
So, yeah, let's jump into this. So there's lots to talk about. Do you guys want to talk Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Agent Carter, or the comics, or the movies? What do you want to talk about first?
Well, I'd love to talk about, just for a quick moment, about, because right now, which I think is great, when we have Agent Carter on hiatus and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on hiatus, you have Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the comics, and
yes.
Agent Carter in the comics, and Operation Sin teamed up with Howard Stark and I'm blanking on his last name, but we're going to call him Woodrow, who is not the original Man on the Wall, but the Man on the Wall we were first introduced to before Nick Fury became the Man on the Wall in Original Sin. And here's some really interesting things that I found about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Operation Sin. First off, as we know, they all take place in the 616. So it's the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. character, the MCU characters in the 616.
Of Peggy Carter and Howard Stark. So we're not talking the cinematic universe. What's the code for the cinematic universe? Does that have its code?
Yes, MCU.
That's just MCU. I didn't know if it had a number code.
No, it doesn't have a number code.
So this is the 616, Peggy Carter, Howard Stark. So what happens in the comics, it's like Vegas. What happens in the comics stays in the comics.
Well, to some extent, yeah.
Right. It's laying groundwork that we could see come about in the MCU.
Well, that was one of the things that I found most interesting about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., because the most recent Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. comic, which features Ms. Marvel as our wonderful little Inhuman crossover, has a nice little side piece about Agent Simmons.
Okay.
And her
interesting.
family.
Okay.
And it turns out her father is an executive for Roxxon, which, of course, as we all know, is evil, meaning she comes from evil stock.
Which might be laying more groundwork of eventually her flipping.
Exactly. And I found that so fascinating that of all the places her father could work,
it's Roxxon.
To say, oh, we're going to make him a high-powered executive. And he's this... He looks like Mr. Hyde. He's this gigantic man Not who you would think of for Simmons at all. So he may be juicing with superpowers or something. I don't know.
Okay.
But and he is a Roxxon executive who doesn't know his daughter is in S.H.I.E.L.D.
Interesting. Okay.
And is very upset with her because he thinks she's a party planner.
Now, since this is 616 and we're not, it's technically not bleeding over. I mean, we've got characters bleeding over, but everything you're saying, we don't know if we're ever going to see Simmons' dad in the MCU, and if the Simmons' dad could even be this character. I mean, it could be anything.
Well, that's true. I mean, that is absolutely true. But I do think that when there's a Star Trek rule, which is that what's in the movies and TV shows are canon, what's in the books and comics are not. But that's because they're actually spread out between a lot of different creatives.
Right.
When you're dealing with Marvel Disney, the whole selling point of Marvel Disney is that it's all in house.
Right. Well,
so
that actually gets into what's happening when this week all the news broke about how the Marvel is basically ending. The storyline, the everything that we've had up to now is ending in May at the end of Secret Wars. And it's all going to be something new. I actually think that what we're going to see at that point that was what my joke was earlier, Jonathan, just so you know. I just had to get that out there. But I actually think what we're going to see is they're going to make it more cohesive. There is going to be, instead of Ultimates and 616 and all this, there's going to be kind of a funneling. So the stuff you're seeing in the MCU is going to be involved with the comics. From a marketing standpoint, I think that's really a great way to go because you can tell your stories and you can have it affect things, but it like making Thor a woman. Well, there's a problem there. If you've got Thor as a woman in the comics and you've got Thor as a man in the movies, the average person that walks into a comic store that goes to pick up a Thor book is going to go, who? And even though it's a great idea and I'm all for it, I think that they're better off doing this where they make it one universe. Even if you do that with Thor and you do this storyline, you know that by the time the next Thor movie comes out, they're going to have resolved it some way so it makes sense.
You see, I'm going to disagree with you on this.
How dare you? No, I'm kidding.
It's okay. And primarily because when we look at how Marvel and the MCU has handled their cosmology in the past, what they have tried very much to do is to have these multiple styles of books and multiple approaches to characters.
I'm all for that. I think that's brilliant. I just think that they're going to unify it a little bit more so that it makes a little bit more sense for the average person walking in.
But I think generally speaking, it is unified. There's the 616, which is the majority. There are these small side universes, the MC2 and the Ultimate Universe. And then there's the MCU. Now, here's an interesting thing, because this is something that one of my children pointed out, where they were asking, why does Tony Stark have the lights on his chest? I think it's actually in the cartoon. He still has the lights on his chest, the arc reactor in his chest in the cartoon, because, they know that in the comic, actually in the movies, he doesn't have it now, although in the comic, it seems like they've put it back in.
Okay.
And that's, and to me, that's sort of where you get this kind of weird spot with the MCU and the 616 bleed over, which is that you've always had this bleed over where you say, it's going to look a lot more like the MCU. Well, it already looks a lot like the MCU. They've done a lot of things to make it seem like the MCU.
Sure.
So that people coming in are not going to be shocked,
Yeah,
yes,
right.
Thor's a woman, but Thor Odin's son is still there and is still drawn to look like Chris Hemsworth.
Right. Nick Fury looks like Samuel Jackson. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and it's and I think that what Marvel's going to do is they'll blow up the universe for a little bit, sort of like they did when they did Amalgam. They blew up the universe. It got completely destroyed and got replaced by something else for a couple of months, and then now we fixed the problem, and now this universe is back and that universe is back, and everything's still on a sliding time scale, so that now even though Howard Stark is now stuck in World War II, Tony Stark is in the 21st century. So it's,
sure.
And that's always problematic because, eventually Howard Stark's going to have to be people's grandfather. He's going to have to be his grandfather instead of his father. And we're going to have a middle Stark they're going to have to stick in there.
Right.
Well,
So Phil, what are your thoughts on this? Jonathan, what are your thoughts? So far, it's been all Charlie and I.
I mean, I'm not really the comic guy, but I think it definitely gets complicated. I think, what I heard this one guy talk on a podcast, and the fact that comics right now aren't so much for like the kids who they're intended for because they're not as approachable. So if they did a complete, more of a reboot or something that you guys are talking about might be more approachable to kids who are that's originally what comic books were for kids. So they're not for, 30-year-olds that have, grew up with comic books. So,
sure.
Because I look at this stuff, I'm like, what in the world is this crazy stuff, I think another thing is that, the Marvel comics have, all of the Marvel characters versus the MCU, which only has, it has most of them, but doesn't have all of them. So,
yeah. So do you think, being the guy who's not a comics guy, do you care what's going on with this? Or is it more just like, okay, you know what, so that's happening over here. MCU is its own thing. Is that kind of how you view it?
Yeah, kind of. I think, it have some kind of, influence and such, like you guys were saying, would be good, for marketing and all that kind of such. But I think in general, kind of keeping them two separate is kind of inevitable because otherwise, I think one of the problems is then you kind of, if you're trying to keep it all in line, like, I don't know how they're going to do that with Star Wars, but that's what they're planning to do with Star Wars, is keep everything in line. So if they're going to try to do this with Marvel, all power to them, but, I think it,
I think one of the biggest problems they have, the biggest problem with that idea is that the basic cosmology of Marvel is based on a many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. This idea that for every universe where an electron moves left, there's a universe where an electron moves right. That infinite possibilities and infinite variations exist in an infinite number of universes. Why in the Spider-Verse crossover that we're currently reading in Amazing Spider-Man, you can have 1968 cartoon Spider-Man interacting with 2014 Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon with Miles Morales Ultimate Spider-Man and Peter Parker the Spectacular Spider-Ham, all in the same universe.
Spider-Ham is the best. Okay, explain something to me, because I'm not reading those yet. You think Jack doesn't read these? I am lagging behind. I'm months behind on the books. So tell me, what is this Spider-Verse thing? I get kind of the gist, but I'm sure there are people listening that have no idea what that is. Okay,
so the Spider-Verse, the idea was every Spider-Man who's ever existed.
Yeah.
Although I will say this, they haven't had Andrew Garfield Spider-Man in there yet, although he might have been one of the cannon fodder who died in an earlier scene. But every Spider-Man who's ever existed, and this includes Spider-Man and his amazing friends, Spider-Monkey, Spider-Ham, Captain Spider from several What Ifs, or not several What Ifs, but one What If issue where Flash Thompson gets bitten by the spider and becomes Captain Spider after a whole period where he's kind of a jerk with his spider powers, as Flash Thompson was wont to be.
Of course, it's Flash Thompson. Come on.
Yes. Though they killed Captain Spider, and it broke my heart when they killed Captain Spider because he's an obscure Marvel character that I happen to have known about.
Okay.
And if you're really obscure and we're in one issue and I know about you, then I am in love with you forever. And then when they kill you, it's like, oh, how could you kill Captain Spider? I got even madder when they killed Spider Monkey. Don't even get me started on the monkey. The Marvel Ape universe has never been given the chance it deserves. That's what I'm going to say right now. But this,
you know what? I'll agree with you. I am all for just like the zombie universe. They need to go full on ape at some point.
Yes. Well, but this is the beauty of it, is that in the Marvel universe, all of these things exist simultaneously, and it's baked in to their cosmology. Their entire cosmology is based on this infinite variable worlds. Now, you always stick in the 616, but you can spread off into these little side universes, and no one worries about it. So you can have a Spider-Girl MC2 universe that's set, somewhere Spider-Man got his powers in like the 60s or 70s, then, retired and had a kid, and you have Mayday Parker, who was a really great character. who is in the Spider-Verse crossover, and then you have, and that can exist as its own thing along with the Ultimate Universe and
So
the
is this a
616.
separate universe that they're doing, or are they just doing this as fan service, giving everybody, here's all the Spider-Mans in one thing? I mean, what are they doing?
There's other dimensional hunters who are hunting every Spider-Man in every alternate universe is what it is.
Is it Kraven? When you say hunters, is it like Kraven?
No, they actually these. How would you explain them, Charlie? They actually
I would explain them as interdimensional vampires.
Yeah, they feed on the spiders. Yeah,
which, quite frankly, my good friend,
you had me at interdimensional vampires.
Marvel over using the idea of interdimensional vampires. By the way, wanted to give a shout out to a friend of mine with her World Walker universe series out there.
What's her name?
Donna Fernstrom. Look her up. It might be Deckard Fernstrom. I can't remember how she lists herself, but she's an old friend of mine, and she wrote a really great series of sort of sci-fi vampire book. Well, I wouldn't call them sci-fi. Well, I guess sci-fi vampire books, because you are doing it with interdimensional vampires walking between worlds, called the World Walker series. And
nice.
It's similar to that idea that there's these beings that are traveling between universes and can feed. Now, in her case, the vampires are actually kind of the good guys. Because hey, she's like me. She was in that vampire peak in the 90s, man. The first vampire peak, not this later Twilight stuff.
Yeah, the Lestat vampire peak.
Exactly.
Jonathan, you're all Twilighted up, so you probably love it, right?
I don't know about that.
Anyway, yeah. So they're interdimensional vampires, and they feed exclusively on spider totems, which is these characters that are bound to the spider, the magical essence of the Spider universe, which goes into that idea of magic versus science superheroes, and trying to inject more magic into the Spider-Man universe, which is interesting in its own sense, and something, as I've mentioned before, where I kind of think that Marvel, although I don't think it's a recent development, but I think that it's something that maybe they're playing with a lot more, where they're putting in that more magical aspect of the science-based heroes, where there's much more of your emotional personality that is expressed through your superhumanity, rather than it being just, I got exposed to radiation and that's why I'm a Hulk. It's like, no, it's the Hulk is a representation of your inner psyche as expressed through this, and the gamma rays were just a catalyst, and that's what released this ultimate monstrous potential within you.
Okay. All right.
Yes. So just to get way off track there.
Yeah, no kidding. I thought I got us off track. Wow, Charlie. Wow. So
really? I'm falling on easy. I'm right on target.
You're on? Okay. All right.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah, Jonathan heard Twilight and he's thinking about that. No, I know, I'm kidding. Jonathan, speaking of Jonathan does our Radio Ramen, the anime podcast, and I had something I wanted to tell you. Yesterday we were at Woodfield Mall, which is it's a big mall by us, and they had a new store called Hello Anime. And it was just a bunch of anime statues and plush toys and keychains and all sorts of stuff. I saw some Sword Art Online stuff. I saw Attack on Titan. A lot of Hello Kitty, lots of My Little Pony. So I just wanted to let you know. I didn't know if you were aware there was a store at a mall, kind of like Hot Topic for anime geeks.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I haven't actually been to one myself, but, I'm not surprised.
All right. Well, I thought of you. And the other thing they had there was the guy, from what I understand, the person who created Pac-Man is opening a theme restaurant, and the outside is, the lights and everything are going to be the kill screen from Pac-Man.
So first you have a Doctor Who cafe, now you're going to have a Pac-Man.
Yes. So everything is in the suburbs of Chicago. Everything. Well, not everything. I'm still waiting for Spider-Man to be brought into the suburbs of Chicago as soon as we make a deal with Sony. So, yeah, I thought of you with that. And then the other thing is, I thought of you today, Phil, because Phil does Gotham. And look, I said it right. And I know you're a big Batman fan. I was at Dave's place of work today. Dave does our 80s Reboot Overdrive podcast. Mm-hmm. And he has the most glorious Batman collection in his office. His office is like a Batman museum. It was crazy I couldn't believe I used to have a cubicle at a job I had, and I had all these toys and crap around. This made me look like a chump. I mean, he had artwork, he had all the figures. It was awesome. So I thought I was like, oh, Phil would love this place. So you're gonna have to make sure you talk to Dave at some point.
Yeah.
So that wasn't a bunch of shameless plugs. That was just stuff I had on my agenda. I wanted to make sure I told people. So okay, let's not get into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Let's talk Agent Carter. What are you guys thinking of it so far?
I've been liking it. I know you guys were kind of down on the last episode.
Yeah, well, you listened to what we said. I don't know if it came off quite right. None of us were really down on it. We still love the show.
Yeah.
That particular episode just didn't move anything forward. It laid some groundwork. It didn't move anything forward. It seems kind of weird when you only have 8 episodes to have kind of a character builder like that.
But do you think maybe that just because the first week they did the first 2 episodes in 1 week, so when they did the third week, it didn't seem like it moved this far?
Could be, which also could speak to the way they're programming it. I mean, here we had 3 weeks in a row. Now we have 2 weeks off, which is weird. And the week that it left us on was a little bit didn't move us.
Mm-hmm.
So
actually, I'm going to completely disagree with you on this.
Again? Oh, Charlie, you're lucky you're out of this state.
I am the churlish Charlie Esser. Let's get back to this. I've used it before, but I'm going to be churlish again.
Okay. And I'm the childish Rob Southgate,
but I'm going to say I'm churlish.
Okay.
And here's what I'm going to say. Now, the last episode of Agent Carter, and here's one thing I've really noticed: Agent Carter and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. The more times you watch it, the more you get pulled into it. And this is something I've really kind of found that, and I think this is intentional, and I think it might be baked into the business model that it's less about getting 1 million eyeballs as it is getting 250,000 eyeballs to watch the same show 4 times.
Okay.
Which makes sense because then you're watching the same placements and ads and whatever's multiple times and getting it ingrained into you. But so, for example, take this last episode. So the big thing about that episode was we have completely killed the MacGuffin of the Stark weapons.
Yes.
The Stark weapons, that MacGuffin is dead. We're not chasing it's not going to be a chasing Stark weapons every week episode because, no, here's all the weapons. We got them. 3rd episode, that's done. And what you shouldn't be asking is, so this isn't a filler episode. This was the wrap-up episode to that first arc.
I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. If you look at it that way, though, it wasn't a really strong wrap-up to that arc.
Well, except that it's also planning.
I think it's a transition episode. That's exactly my point. I think that's what it is, and I'm good with that. It's just from a storytelling standpoint, it was a little weird. If they had shown 2 on that second night, I think it would have been a lot stronger. Just like they're doing with Gallivant. They're showing 2 episodes a night of Gallivant. I'm telling you, if they did 1 a night, that would be a harder sell. By having 2 a night, I mean, it's great. And I think Carter, at this point, could serve well from doing that.
Well, to that extent, let me give you this thought to think about. Marvel has an exclusivity deal with Netflix on these things.
Yes, they do.
So it's entirely possible that this is written and produced to be a binge watch later.
Oh, so I agree with that 100%.
And of course, and again, like I said, every time you watch this, I guarantee you, if you watch Time in the Tide again, you're going to say, oh, I didn't even notice that the last time. Oh, hey, what's with this? Why is that character doing this?
Okay.
And you're going to see a lot more on repeat viewings because, like I said, I think that is baked into its business model now. I think that is exactly what they're looking for. They're not so much worried about whether or not they get that big initial rating so much as they get, the nerds turning in like 2 or 3 times.
How dare you again. Phil, are you offended by that?
No, I thought he was talking about himself, actually.
Nerd pride, every minute. I do not back away from that word.
Me either, obviously.
We can use it. That's what I'm saying.
How do you think he knows all this stuff? He watches it 6 or 7 times.
Right.
So, like, most notably, here's a couple things to think about. Agent Tompkins is the guy with the friend in Moscow.
Right.
Agent Tompkins is the guy who tortures people. Agent Tompkins, or I can't remember if it's Tompkins or Thompson, but I think it's Tompkins.
No, I think it's Thompson. Remember, because I said that the other guy was from Boardwalk Empire, so it was like ironic that he was calling somebody Thompson.
I think because I think we said it was O'Doyle, and it's actually which is another character from Boardwalk Empire, and it's actually Dooley. But anyway, either way, the blonde guy. So there's the blonde guy, the guy with the crutch, the slightly chubby guy who's dead now, and Agent Carter, the boss guy.
That was the guy that was on the show Worst Week. I was surprised they killed him because he was so funny on the show Worst Week, and I thought, okay, he's going to be around for a while. He's going to kind of be comic relief, and they'll probably do something with him to evolve him because the guy's really good. Killing him, that was a bold move in my opinion. I was actually impressed they did it.
Yeah, but you only get eight episodes too.
True, but he's gone early. Talk to me at episode 6. You're not even going to remember that guy was there.
Yeah.
It's like Survivor. You ever watch Survivor? You know, you watch Survivor, you're so invested in these people, and you're like, oh, yeah, they're so awesome. And, oh, this guy, I hate this guy. And then by the time you get to the end and they do the recap just before they announce who wins, you don't even remember. You're like, who the hell is that? It's like, that guy was only 6 episodes ago. I can't even remember who he is.
Yeah.
So,
especially when they take breaks, too.
Yeah. So I think that in that respect, they may have done him a little bit of a disservice, but at the same time, I thought it was a bold move killing a character that I was convinced was going to be around.
Yeah, well, and that's why they killed him. I mean, that's what, not for nothing. I think this is still a Joss Whedon show. So, yes, they're going to be killing people.
Yeah.
And people you love and people you hate, but people are going to die. And if be honest, it's the superhero universe. People do die all the time.
And come back to
more
life.
than you realize, because some characters live a long time and come back from the dead, but a lot of people actually die,
Right. I'm Lucy Lawless is coming back. I'm holding strong to that one.
Yes. Yeah, I'm holding strong that Victoria Hand will come back someday, but I don't think it's happening in either the comic books or the MCU. Although with After Secret Wars, they said anyone can come back.
Yeah. Now, okay, let's go to that. Do you think when we were talking about how it affects things, if Secret Wars is burning everything down and kind of rebuilding from the ground up, do you think that there will be any effect? There can't be on the MCU, right? Not on things like that. If you're talking like Victoria Hand dies on S.H.I.E.L.D. and they leave her dead, even if they bring her back in Marvel Comics, there's no way, right?
Well, so here's what happens, and this is why I'm a big believer that you've got to watch everything that Marvel does, because you never know what's going to be the thing that's going to tie into something else.
Right.
It's like the 1990s Red Skull being the basis for the 2000s Red Skull.
Yeah, no kidding. Right.
Because it all connects. And you mark my words, they're going to do a relationship story between the Falcon and the Scarlet Witch eventually. It's coming in the near future. Watch for it. And I know this because it was on Superhero Squad.
Interesting. You know what? Oh God, I wish Lil was on right now because that's the kind of stuff he always notices too.
Well, did you hear when they did the Secret Wars? When I don't know. I guess they did a live whatever this week. Did you see the quote that they dropped? They said, anyone after this thing, we could bring anyone back. They said Gwen Stacy could come back.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm sure they're going to bring. Okay, so here's the thing: when they bring everything back, what they've said is they're going to take all the different universes, and it's kind of like they're taking. At least this is the assumption. They're taking kind of the fan favorites, the best of from each of these, and bringing them in. Well, Gwen Stacy in one of the storylines is alive, right? Isn't she Spider-Girl or something?
Yeah, she's Spider-Gwen, which is
Spider-Gwen. And people like that character.
For a superhero, by the way.
People like her.
Yeah, I know, but if you're going to put your name in your superhero name, you're kind of missing the point of having a secret identity.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But I think they're. I know Charlie's convinced they're not going to change a lot, but I'm thinking they're.
I think they are.
It's going to be like the DC New 52, I think, and they said they're going to be bringing back a lot because just in the last year they've killed off Wolverine and the Watcher.
So I think what's going to happen there is things like Wolverine, things like the Fantastic Four. They're ending that book. I think they're going to let that stuff stay dormant because they're choking out those other studios. I really think that's what's going on.
See, I don't think that. First of all, I think the studios are doing a fine job choking themselves out.
I do too.
Well, first off, that Fantastic Four film is dead. I think we can all agree it's Roger Corman's Fantastic Four, except that this one cost $100 million instead of $2 million to make.
Yeah,
there's trailer's coming soon. It could be awesome.
It
Oh
could
yeah,
be.
soon.
That's the
soon.
crazy thing. That's the craziest thing, though. With all, it goes back into editing. They do some reshoots, and there have been turds that have been polished and been amazing after they've been repolished. So there is that chance that it could work. Top
But
Gun.
90%
Top
of the
Gun.
turds you make go down the toilet. Let's be honest.
Let me tell you something. Top Gun, which is not, I'm not a fan of that movie. Okay, a lot of people love that movie. I don't think it's that great. But that movie, before it came out, they did the review screenings and everything, and it bombed.
Mm-hmm.
They went back, did some reshoots, and added the entire Kelly McGillis storyline. The girl in the movie was not in the movie they were going to release. And last minute, they put her in, added all that, and then it becomes like this classic. People love this movie. That could happen.
Yeah, but you made the analogy polishing a turd. I think this new Fantastic Four movie is more like diarrhea. You ain't polishing that.
Yeah,
I mean, the Fantastic Four was
Ew.
the comic book. I remember wasn't selling at all. So
no, well, Fantastic Four is one of those things. People talk about it a lot, but I think it's a title past its time, actually.
Well, it's more of a 50s, 60s, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's great history, but I don't know if it's a book that most people can connect with. I actually like the FF series, which didn't do well.
Yeah. Well, here's what I'll say about the Fantastic Four. I think the Fantastic Four is a microbrew of comic books, and it's the shock top in the Budweiser line.
Your references.
Yes, it's this product that has a following that really likes it and and they'll buy each one you make, and you only have to make as many as you want to sell.
Right, but it's a microbrew. I get that.
Yeah,
although I'm not a beer drinker. Jonathan, you're not either, right?
Yeah,
No.
and here's the thing. Marvel has so many microbrew comics when you think about it. They've got so many comics that, it's like this. The She-Hulk lasted 12 issues. It might have been you could have drug it out for 16. You could have, you could have dragged it out for 16. You could have done done any number of things. But it was going to be about a 12-issue comic. And there's that core She-Hulk fan base, of which I am a dedicated member, who, when you put out a She-Hulk book, I'm going to run, I'm going to buy, it's on my pull list before it even comes out, and I've got every issue.
Yeah.
And when you're done, okay, I'll wait for the next one. And in a couple of years, you'll have another one. And and this is a business model that I think Marvel has, in the comic book line, has gotten really savvy at, where they know they've got all these characters. You can't do, you're never going to have the She-Hulk go for 600 issues at the moment, unless some miracle creator comes into it. But you're going to be able to sell all the She-Hulks you make.
Right.
And so long as you don't make too many, you can sell them. And that's working out the math of the character. And they do all these small little characters, and they'll run them in these short books. And then, when they're done, they're done. And then they do another small character, another Captain Spider, some obscure character that only I remember.
Right.
That I'm going to run out and buy. Oh, they got the Captain Spider limited series. I have to buy that, because that's how they got me to buy Agent Venom, Flash Thompson, Captain Spider, Agent Venom. There you go. And I'm there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think, like, with the Fantastic Four thing, all they need is, like, a good Fantastic Four movie, and
right, and it's right back on top. I think that's true of any of these things, and I think that's where Disney is getting it right. They proved it with Guardians. They really proved they can take any property, and if they make a good movie, they can sell it to the public.
yeah,
because we're talking about it with Ant-Man, and I'm like, you know what? Ant-Man's going to be fine. Ant-Man's actually looking good, in my opinion.
Yeah, because they even said before the first Iron Man movie, the Iron Man comic book wasn't even selling that well.
Right. He was considered a second or even third tier character. Like, he was a character people recognized, but nobody was running out to see an Iron Man movie. And I mean, look at him now.
Yeah. And any Marvel stuff you see, there's like Iron Man all over it.
Right.
Well, exactly. But that's what Marvel is, because Marvel is very character driven, and I think, just to get into a Marvel DC debate here,
you guys, I need to hop off.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jonathan, thank you.
I mentioned Marvel DC debate. He said, I got to go.
He's done. Jonathan, thanks for being on. Thanks for being part of the, what we call this, the NSU.
I'll try to hop back on.
We're the NSU now. We just coined a new phrase. So thanks for being part of it. You rock. And Jonathan, you did the summer movies. Are you doing summer movies with us again?
We'll see.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
He's got Star Wars issues to contend with.
Yeah.
Yep, that's where his little heart is.
Well,
so.
I'm graduating, so I don't know what's going to happen.
Oh, okay.
So.
Well, I graduated and this happened, so there you go.
So see, you don't have to do something with your life just because you have a degree.
That's right. Or can, just because you have a degree.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks for being part of it. It was fun.
Yeah.
Any parting thoughts on your part? Or not? He has gone. Did he just give the finger on the way out? I'm not sure. No, I'm kidding.
So anyway, Marvel DC, as I think in many ways, Marvel is based on these characters, and DC, I think, gets more caught up in their brands. In the idea that Batman winds up at times being, and I'm sure there's a lot of DC guys that are going to go, "Oh, you're wrong, and you don't know what you're talking about." But I'm just going to say, I feel like as a non-DC fan, that DC's books tend to get more wrapped up in this idea that, oh, there's the Superman brand, and how do we make the Superman brand fit in our storyline, rather than what is the Superman character, and how do we make the Superman character? How do we just tell stories about the Superman character?
Okay.
And
now,
I think
Phil, you're gonna take him to task on this though, because you're a DC fan, right?
Well, I'm both, but I mean, he does have some good points. It seems like, I don't know, DC takes like their big characters, their Batman, their Superman, and they try to build the whole universe off of them. Meanwhile, Marvel, they set, the foundation's built on everyone, the Iron Mans, the Thors, the Captain Americas.
Yeah,
sure.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, I think that's sort of why you don't have a Marvel Superman, because you don't have a big pillar character like a Superman, like a Batman, like a Wonder Woman.
You wouldn't say that they tried to do that with Spider-Man for the longest time. I say they did, and I say they did it with Wolverine too. Although their very bold move, they killed Wolverine.
Well, but to that extent, I mean, and to put it simply, I mean, absolutely, they have tried, or I won't even say they've tried, but I think that they certainly have tried. I mean, they'd love to have a Superman. They'd love to have a character that they can put an S on a T-shirt and it's going to sell 1 billion things. Yeah.
Although I really do think they kind of did that with Spider-Man. I really do.
Except for the fact that if you just have a spider on your T-shirt, most people don't know what that's going to be necessarily.
I don't know about that. I really
think
don't.
Superman and
Batman, think if you have
Wonder Woman.
I think if you have Daredevil's skull on your shirt, not everyone's going to know. I think if you have Daredevil's D's on there, it might give the wrong message. I don't want that website. But if you, I got to laugh out of Phil. If you have the Spider-Man, the eyes, if you have the they don't have the iconic S.
That's what I'll give you. The circular Spider-Man face with eyes, the spider signal,
right,
is as close as DC Marvel has ever come to having that really iconic. And you think about like DC, how many characters have just an iconic symbol? Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Flash.
Yeah, that's all marketing, and I think that's one thing that they got lucky early on with. If you think about it, the ones that really have that iconic figure are Batman and Superman more than anything. Flash is probably next in line of having that iconic symbol. But those symbols were created a long time ago, way before Marvel got into their game heavily.
Yeah, but
and if you go by that, Captain America's shield is just as tight and iconic, I would say.
Yeah. But even the movies have helped their brand, because I mean, I have a plain black T-shirt with like all it is in the center. It looks like Tony Stark's arc reactor.
Yeah.
And I've had many people come up to me and say, "Oh, cool, that's a cool Iron Man shirt."
Yeah.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. I think Marvel would love to have what DC has in a character like Superman, and
I think they're getting there.
Yeah, well, they're trying to. They're working on it, I
think they're doing a great job. I actually think that DC is tainting its brand in a lot of ways, and it's always gonna have the S, and it's always gonna have the bat signal. But I think that Marvel is going to surpass it as far as volume of things that people want to buy. How many people want to go out and buy Superman comics as opposed to want to buy, Thor and Iron Man comics at this point? I really question that.
Well, I think in that sense, I think that Marvel is doing well at building at building their brands, but DC's still having trouble finding a way to build their characters into their brand.
Sure.
Because, and I think that it's easy to take a character. I won't say it's easy, but I'm going to say if you have a character, building that character into a brand, I think is easier than if you have a brand and trying to essentially shrink them back down to a character.
Sure.
Charlie,
I'm going to go with you on that. I think that what you just said is actually really at the root of the matter in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. I think that might be where part of the problem is for DC. And I know I don't want this to sound like a bashing DC show because it's not. I know. Yeah, this is a Marvel show, but you know what? I like both. Also, I'm a comics fan.
Mm-hmm.
I'll sit here and talk about liking even like Spawn comics. Not as much, but I will talk about that.
Someone's got to.
Someone's got to.
Hey,
yeah,
I read them.
Yeah, you know what? We read them. We're comics fans, right?
Yeah.
But when you get into like I don't see myself doing a DC show. Although I do have to say, I do like their TV stuff.
Well, yeah.
But their movies are not unified. And that's a big problem that Marvel has overcome.
Well, I think that's their big misstep that DC did that Marvel has down is their TV universes and their movie universes and the comic books. They're all really separate. And, Marvel's trying to bring everything in one cohesive whole.
Right. Yeah. I'm with you.
And along, one of the things that I think that Gotham does really well is, and it's a Batman show without Batman. And I think that is one of its big selling points, is it's so much about all the other characters in Gotham. Because DC has great characters, but I think that, and honestly, I think this is either what's going to kill Justice League or make Justice League great, is that you've got so many icons that you're putting into one movie. But it might be their idea that, hey, if we put enough icons in here, we're not going to have an iconic film. We're going to have a bunch of great characters in this film because it's not going to be the Superman film because, oh, wait, here's Wonder Woman. And she's right up there with Superman. And here's Batman. And he's right up there with...
It's not, but if you look at everything, it's shaping up to be a Batman movie. That's what they're doing. Because they know that's their most marketable movie franchise. And it went from being a Superman movie to Batman versus Superman to, hey, let's launch Justice League with this. And we can put all these other characters in it. And the more I see, it's becoming more and more a Batman movie.
Oh, yeah. They even said, I think Batman's making an appearance in Suicide Squad now, too.
Yeah. Personally, as much as I think that sounds awesome, I think that movie is going to be a train wreck.
Wait, they're making a Suicide Squad movie now?
Yes. Oh, it's got an awesome cast, but already we've had one cast member, one player drop out. And I know they're spinning it like, oh, well, it was conflicts with this and conflicts. Bull. There's something wrong with this production. Yeah. I'm telling you, there is something wrong.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to say what goes right or what goes wrong at Warner's. But I think.
No, it's easy for us. We're speculating.
Exactly. But I think what their problem is that they're not. When Disney bought Marvel to have brand, to have characters. When they brought Star Wars, they bought Star Wars to have brands.
Absolutely.
When the parking company bought DC and eventually bought Warner Brothers, which is kind of weird because everyone thinks, oh, Warner owns DC. Actually, technically, it's this weird. Like if you actually look at who bought who, a company, I think it was Kinney Garages, bought DC and then bought Warner's and then spun off Kinney Garages, and Warner's and DC's just sort of wound up being together. It was not so.
It wasn't a planned out thing like the Marvel thing.
Exactly. Disney Marvel, it was this top down. We are a company that has icons and markets, characters and brands and merchandises.
Right.
And like I said, I keep on repeating this rumor. It is probably not true, but I keep on repeating it that Guardians was in the black before the first ticket sold just from T-shirt sales. I've heard that somewhere and I can't remember where, but I'm going to repeat that till the day I die because I love that idea.
You know what? I wouldn't doubt it actually.
Yes.
I think the movie wasn't as big a risk as everybody thinks it was.
The kids in my life,
Yeah. I don't think that movie was as big a risk as everybody says it is. Or it's like, wow, they took such a risk. I don't think so. I think it was a really well calculated. I think that it taught them a lot, and I think that it strengthened their place a lot. But at the same time, I I don't think it was that big a risk. I don't think that movie cost nearly as much as you think it would.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I don't think it was that much of a calculated risk because the MCU was already this big established thing. If that had been their first movie, maybe.
Right. Then you could make that argument, sure.
Yeah. But
although
yeah.
I'll always be proud of my son, my youngest son, that when I got him the Guardians of the Galaxy T-shirt, the first thing he said when he looked at it, he said, "Where's the green girl?"
Ah, excellent.
Yeah, because he
for
knows
him.
the green girl. She's one of the characters. Why isn't she on my T-shirt?
You know what?
So-
I got an Avengers T-shirt when the movie came out. I got it at Five Below. $5 for a T-shirt, and I was like, "Oh, sweet, an Avengers shirt." Black Widow's the only one not on there, and
Yeah.
it really bothers me. I didn't notice when I bought it because I just saw Avengers and bought it. Got it home, opened it up. I'm like, wait a minute. And I still wear it. I wear it under, like I use it as a shirt underneath other shirts. And my daughter will say all the time, like, why isn't Black Widow on there? And I mean, she's 7,
Yeah, I don't understand that because I mean, the little boys are coming to this movie. Don't you want to try to get the little girls in there to watch?
Well,
these
those
movies?
types of things, that's licensed by a different thing. It's not Marvel necessarily.
Yeah.
So it makes sense
Well, that's
that
like-
somebody doesn't have the foresight.
Yeah. Well, what it is, actually, according to Grace Randolph, anyway, and why she's not the Watcher anymore, it is intentional from Marvel in this idea that they are worried, and there is, and here's what I'll say: it's that weird calculation between what you'd like to do and what you have to do, where Marvel wants to promote female superheroes, but is very worried about how people will react to female superheroes. Especially in items that are marketed to their sons,
Right.
Because there are guys that, for whatever, and this
Like
is the
guys
thing,
like a Lil, right?
who
Hey,
are gonna-
Lil.
who are going to say, "Well, I don't want my son wearing a shirt with the girl character on it because I don't want people to think my kid likes girls or something." Which,
What?
it's weird, man. I have 2 sons, and I've had to deal with them being like bothered by people thinking that they like girl things because they like a cartoon that has a female character. And I'm like, no, it's okay. You can like whatever you want, and you can like a character, and girl characters can kick butt too. It's great. But
I
they
think
will
I've
get-
made it very clear I am a She-Hulk and Black Widow fan on here. So
oh yeah. But but the reality is that outside of certain cultural circles, sometimes people get really weirded out by things.
yeah.
And it's like I said, I think Marvel has done a lot. I won't
Please
say
flip the
they're
cassette over to
best
side B to continue the adventure.